Welcome to my channel, folks. I'm Nancy Thompson, your storyteller of good ol' American folk tales, thrilling mysteries, and all sorts of wild topics. Y'all come on in and join me. Today's story is about a woman named Lily Turner. She comes from a dirt-poor family in a small rural town. Her dad passed away when she was just a kid, leaving no one to hold things together. It was just her and her old grandma at home. The weight of the whole family fell square on Lily Turner's shoulders. Everyone around town praised her as a devoted daughter, tougher than 100 boys put together. The folks in town knew Lily Turner had it rough, and they'd pitch in however they could, even just a little. But Lily? She was fiercely independent. If she could handle something herself, she'd never dream of bothering anyone else. So she'd head out to work before the crack of dawn, not dragging herself home till long after the sun went down. All Lily wanted was to save up enough cash, so her mom wouldn't have to work herself to the bone anymore. Her mom, Martha, was the town's old country doctor. She'd hike up into the hills to gather herbs, treating the townsfolk's ailments. Martha hardly ever took a dime for it. Just a basket of groceries or some home-cooked food was plenty. Lily and her mom got along great with everyone in town. They were well-liked, no question about it, but with no man around to lean on. Things at home were pretty grim, money-wise. Lily was out gathering some extra firewood one day, planning to rest up a bit afterward. But right then, a middle-aged guy came sprinting toward her, yelling as he ran, "Lily! Lily! Bad news! Your mom, she just took a nasty fall off a ridge up in the hills. She's hanging on by a thread. You'd better get home quick to see her one last time." When Lily heard that, her face went white as a sheet. The firewood slipped right out of her hands, hitting the dirt with a thud. She bolted home in a panic, heart pounding like a drum. By the time she got to the front door, the yard was already packed with neighbors. Lily rushed inside and found her mom teetering on the edge. Martha must have been holding on, worried sick about leaving her girl behind. She'd clung to life just long enough for Lily to get there. Lily broke down sobbing, clutching her mom's hand. "Mom, what happened? Didn't I tell you to steer clear of that steep ridge? Why'd you go up there anyway?" Martha heard Lily's voice and cracked her eyes open, feebly reaching out to touch her daughter's head. "Lily, honey, the Johnson boy down the road got real sick. We ran out of the herbs I needed here at home. I went up to that ridge to find some. It's the only place they grow. Good news is, I got him. But I'm old now, sweetheart. Leaving you behind, it's tearing me up inside. I need you to listen," Martha went on, her voice fading. "After I'm gone, head to the city and find your uncle. He'll take care of you, I know he will." Lily froze, stunned. "Uncle? Since when do I have an uncle?" "Mom, hang on, don't go yet. I'll run to town and fetch a doctor." Martha shook her head, gripping Lily's arm tighter. "No, honey, I know my body's done for. Save your money. I never told you about him, 'cause he's not my blood brother. Your granddad saved his life 10 years back, and he swore he'd repay the favor someday. His name's Frank Peterson. He's got a hardware store in the city now. If you're ever in a bind, go to him. He'll help you, I trust him." With her last bit of strength, Martha spilled everything she knew about Frank, then let out her final breath. Lily wailed, tears streaming down her face, her heart breaking into a million pieces. A neighbor, Tom Johnson, stepped up and put a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, don't grieve too hard now. Your mom's passing, it's tied to us too. She saved my boy's life with those herbs. We'll cover the coffin and funeral costs. If it weren't for her, he'd be gone." Lily choked out a "Thank you, Tom," through her tears. "I'll be all right, you don't worry about me." With the whole town pitching in, they gave Martha a simple but heartfelt send-off. Folks around there stuck together like glue, even if they didn't have much. Afterward, Lily handed her run-down little house over to a neighbor, Jim Carter, asking him to keep an eye on it. Then, following her mom's dying wish, she set off for the city. After 2 days of hiking trails and hitching rides, Lily finally rolled into Springfield, a bustling little city not too far off. She scraped together enough change to pay the bus fare into town. then started asking around. "Where's Frank Peterson's hardware store?" It took some wandering, but she eventually spotted a sign in the West End. Peterson's Hardware. Lily couldn't read much, but she recognized the hammer logo on the sign. Still, she wasn't sure, so she stepped inside real cautious-like. "Need something, miss?" A young clerk piped up. "We got tools, nails, lumber, you name it. Best quality this side of the state. Straight from the Midwest to right here. Even got some fancy imported stuff. Other shops can't touch us." The kid, all eager and chatty, hustled over to greet her. Lily mumbled, Is this Peterson's Hardware?" The clerk nodded, puzzled. "Sure is. You here to buy something?" "No, I ain't shopping," Lily said quick. "I'm here to find someone, Frank Peterson. He's my uncle. I came to see him." The clerk, a scrappy kid named Joey, scratched his head. "Granddaughter of the boss? Ha. That don't add up. I never heard of him having any sisters. You sure about that?" Right then, a sharp voice cut in from behind the counter. "Joey, you slacking off again? What's all that whispering about?" A woman strutted out, Dolores, Frank's wife, decked out in a flashy dress, swinging her hips like she owned the place. Joey shrank back a bit. "No ma'am, I ain't slacking. This girl says she's the boss's niece, here looking for family." Dolores sized Lily up from head to toe, her lip curling into a sneer. "Joey, don't let just anybody waltz in here. She looks like she can't even afford a rusty nail. My husband ain't got no sisters, niece my foot. She's probably spinning a yarn. Kick her out before she scares off the real customers." Dolores waved a hand like she was shooing a fly, then turned on her heel and sashayed off. Joey swallowed hard, half mesmerized by her attitude, half terrified of her temper. Dolores ran the show when Frank wasn't around. And she didn't mess around. If Frank caught wind of trouble, heads would roll. He turned back to Lily, shrugging. "You heard her, miss. She's the boss's wife, and she says he ain't got no kin like you. Better hit the road before she gets mad for real." Lily's stomach knotted up, but she wasn't giving up. "Please, Joey, I swear I'm Frank Peterson's niece. Just tell him I'm here, he'll know me when he sees me." Joey shook his head. "Look, you're out of luck. Frank's off on a supply run, won't be back for a while. Don't make this harder on me, all right?" Lily sighed, then dug into her pocket. She pulled out an old brass keychain with a faded red ribbon tied to it. "When he gets back, give him this. He'll figure it out." Joey took the keychain, looking dubious, about to stash it in his pocket when a hand snatched it away. "Hand it over, Joey." "What, you hiding stuff now? Want your paycheck docked?" Dolores was back, glaring daggers. Joey handed it over without a fight. She turned the keychain over in her manicured fingers, noticing it wasn't some cheap trinket. She tucked it away, smirking as she glanced at Lily's retreating figure. Even if this girl was telling the truth, Dolores wasn't about to let her cozy up to Frank. With no family to turn to and nowhere else to go, Lily left the hardware store behind. She bought a couple of stale rolls from a street vendor, grabbed her beat-up sack of belongings, and trudged out of Springfield. Word on the street led her to an old abandoned barn, just outside town, tucked away in the woods. She couldn't head back home yet, not without seeing Frank. The barn was small and drafty, but at least it kept the beggars and troublemakers away. Lily swept out the dust and cobwebs as best she could, making the run-down barn a temporary hideout. She'd been crashing there a few days already. That morning, the sky was gray and heavy, so she trekked into town, grabbed some cheap grub, and checked on Frank's store again. Still no sign of him. Defeated, she hiked back to the barn to keep waiting. That night, a downpour hit hard, rain leaking through the barn's cracked roof. Lily couldn't sleep, huddled in a corner, trying to keep a fire going to stay warm. Then, out of nowhere, footsteps sloshed through the mud outside. Her heart jumped to her throat. She stomped out the fire quick and ducked behind a busted wall, peering through a gap, scared stiff of who might barge in. The barn door creaked open, and a guy in a soaked white shirt stumbled inside, blood staining his clothes, spreading in the rain. Lily peeked out, holding her breath. He didn't make it far, collapsed flat on the floor and didn't move. She waited tense, tossing a few pebbles his way. No reaction. Was he dead? Lily crept out, inching toward him. She nudged him gently, whispering, "Hey, you okay?" Nothing. She dragged him over to the fireplace, shut the door tight, and got the fire going again. Up close, she saw the guy was a mess. A deep gash across his chest, plus a few smaller cuts. Her gut said to help, even if it was risky. Lily boiled some water to clean him up, then grabbed a couple of homemade salves from her sack. Stuff Martha had whipped up back in the day, good for healing. She dabbed the medicine on his wounds, wrapped them with strips torn from an old shirt, and stoked the fire to keep him warm. She hung his drenched clothes to dry by the flames, then slumped against the wall, exhausted, drifting off without meaning to. "Hey, where am I?" A groggy voice jolted Lily awake. She blinked, realizing the guy was up, staring at her. "You're awake. This is an old barn just outside Springfield," she said, relieved. He studied her, his face softening. "So you're the one who patched me up?" Lily blushed, nodding. "Last night you stumbled in here half dead." The guy sighed, grateful. "Guess I owe you my life, then. Name's Jake Travis. I'm from a big family in Springfield, old money you could say. Last night was a close call, but thanks to you, I'm still kicking." He paused, testing his strength, then winced. "Still weak as a kitten, though. Sorry to trouble you, miss." Lily waved it off. "Just rest up, Jake. But what happened to you out there?" Jake let out a long breath, settling back against the wall. "All right, here's the deal. I'm Jake Travis, eldest son of the Travis family. We own half the lumber mills around Springfield. 3 months back, I was hauling a big shipment up to Jefferson City. On the way home, somebody set me up. My right-hand man, a guy I trusted like a brother, sold me out, led me straight into an ambush. My crew fought hard, but they didn't make it. I barely got out alive, thanks to a couple of them covering me. I've been running ever since," Jake went on. "Those goons kept chasing me, hounding me through the woods. Last night, that storm hit, wiped out my tracks, thank God. I saw your fire flickering in here and took a chance. Honestly, I thought it might be another trap. But I was too beat to care, bleeding out, legs giving up. You saved my hide, and I can't thank you enough." Jake locked eyes with Lily, his voice steady despite the pain. "Look, I've got one more favor to ask. This place ain't safe, those guys could still sniff me out. Can you get me into Springfield? Once I'm inside city limits, I've got people who'll handle it. They won't touch me there." Lily hesitated. Her, a scrawny girl, dragging a wounded guy into town? Jake saw her doubt and nodded. "Fair point. How about this? Take this old pocket watch of mine. Head to the Blue Moon Diner and find a guy named Eddie Walsh. Show him the watch, he'll round up some help." Lily chewed her lip but nodded. "All right, I can do that. There's a crawl space back there, I'll stash you in it. No one'll find you unless they tear this place apart." Jake managed a weak grin. "Thanks, miss. You're a lifesaver, literally." It took some doing, but Lily hauled him into the tight space, covered up the bloodstains with dirt, and straightened the barn to hide any sign of him. Then she grabbed the watch and headed for town. Luck was on Lily's side that day. She hit the Blue Moon Diner and found Eddie Walsh right off the bat. A wiry guy with a cigarette dangling from his lip. When she flashed Jake's watch, Eddie's face darkened. He didn't waste time, called over a dozen rough-looking fellas, hitched up a truck, and followed her directions back to the barn. "Jake, what the hell happened to you?" Eddie barked, helping him out of the crawl space. Jake waved him off. "Long story, Eddie. Let's get moving, I'll fill you in later." Eddie turned to Lily as they loaded Jake into the truck. "You're Lily, right? Come with us, this barn's no place to stick around." "Hold up, how's a girl like you surviving out here in the sticks?" He'd spotted her little pile of stuff in the corner. She'd clearly been camping there a while. Lily ducked her head, embarrassed. "I came to Springfield looking for my uncle, Frank Peterson. He's been out of town, and his wife didn't buy my story. I've been waiting here till he gets back. Jake overheard and shot Eddie a look. Eddie, when we hit town, set her up with a decent room at the diner's boarding house. She's my guardian angel, treat her right. Lily started to protest. No, Jake, that's too much. But he cut her off. Lily, this barn's a target now. If those thugs figure out you helped me, they'll come after you. Plus, you'll be closer to tracking down your uncle. Just take it, all right? Lily couldn't argue with that logic, so she gave in. Eddie's crew hauled them all back to Springfield, and he got her a cozy room above the Blue Moon Diner. Jake and Eddie took off in a hurry. Whatever they were planning, it looked serious. Lily spent the next 3 days hanging around Peterson's hardware, watching for Frank. Finally, on the third afternoon, she spotted a middle-aged guy with a weathered face unloading a truck. Had to be him. Lily stepped up, nerves jangling. "Excuse me, sir, are you Frank Peterson?" The guy turned, sizing her up, surprised. "Yeah, that's me. Who are you?" "I'm Lily Turner," she said. "My mom was Martha Grayson. My granddad was Jim Grayson. Mom told me to find you, she said you'd help me." Frank's jaw dropped, then a grin spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned, you're Jim's granddaughter. Come on in, kid." Frank ushered Lily into the back of the hardware store, settling her down with a cup of coffee. "How long you been in town? How's your mom holding up?" "I've been swamped, haven't made it out to see you folks in ages. Martha's stubborn as a mule, though. Every time I offered to bring her to the city, she'd turn me down flat. Even sent her some cash once, but she mailed it right back." Lily's face fell. "Frank, Mom's gone. She passed a while back. I've been here a few days, but I couldn't find you till now." Frank's smile faded, his shoulders slumping. "Damn, I never got to say goodbye." "Well, you're here now, and that's what counts. This is your home, treat it like it." "Wait, you said you've been here days? Didn't you run into my wife, Dolores?" Before Lily could answer, Dolores swept in, all sugar and smiles. "Oh honey, this must be your niece. My mistake, I didn't recognize her last time. Thought she was some drifter pulling a fast one. Guess we're family now, huh?" Frank chuckled, shaking his head. "My fault, Dolores. I never told you the whole story. Lily's granddad, Jim, saved my life back in the day. He's the closest thing I had to a dad. Never met Lily till now, though." Dolores sidled up to Lily, batting her lashes. "Sorry about before, sweetie. Let your auntie make it up to you." Lily waved it off. "No harm done, ma'am. I didn't know much about Frank either till Mom told me." Segment 40, Settling In. That night, Frank threw a little welcome dinner for Lily, introducing her around as kin. Since he and Dolores didn't have kids, Lily went from stranger to something like a daughter overnight. She stuck around the hardware store, helping out where she could, washing dishes, running errands, pitching in at the counter. After a month, she was starting to feel like she belonged. One day, Lily was beat from running around the store all morning. She slipped into the back storage room to catch a breather and dozed off against a stack of lumber. Middle of the night, nature called, so she stumbled out, still half asleep. As she passed the tool shed out back, she caught hushed voices, a man and a woman, whispering fast. Curious, she crouched by the window and eavesdropped. "What's the rush dragging me out here?" the man hissed. "Frank's not even around, you scared of nothing." "Keep it down," the woman snapped back. "We can't risk this in broad daylight. If anybody catches us, we're toast." "Don't sweat it," he said. "Listen, I've got all the receipts and invoices from the store locked down. One good excuse, and Frank's out on his ear. We'd walk away with Peterson's hardware free and clear." Lily's heart skipped a beat when she heard Frank's name. She peeked through a crack in the shed wall. There, in the dim light, was Dolores, scheming with a slick-looking guy, Walt Jenkins, the store's top manager. Walt smirked at Dolores. "You think I'd lie to you? We've been at this game for months. If it weren't for that girl showing up, I wouldn't be pushing so hard now." "What's she got to do with it?" Walt asked, leaning in. Dolores's voice turned ice cold. "She's trouble. I've been married to Frank 3 years. Made damn sure we never had kids, all for you. But now? I'm switching gears. I'll get pregnant, pop out a kid. Then find a way to ditch Frank for good. Once he's gone, this store's ours, lock, stock and barrel. Walt grinned, eyes gleaming. Clever as ever. So what's the hold-up? Let's get to it. Dolores grabbed his wandering hand. Tomorrow night, Frank's heading to the lumberyard to check a shipment. He won't be back till late. Come to my room then, this shed's too damn chilly. Walt laughed low. Deal. I'll be there tomorrow night, sweetheart. Lily's stomach churned listening to this. She shifted to sneak away. But her foot bumped a metal bucket. Clang. Who's there? Dolores yelped, jumping up. Lily froze, then thought fast. She let out a shaky meow, mimicking a stray cat. Scrambling, she bolted as 2 alley cats conveniently darted past, their shadows flickering in the moonlight. Walt poked his head out, spotting the cats. Relax, it's just a couple of strays getting frisky, he said, chuckling. Dolores exhaled, tension easing. Not long after, the 2 of them slinked off, still plotting. Lily couldn't believe it. Dolores and Walt, cooking up a scheme to stab Frank in the back. She had to warn him. Lily raced to Frank's office, banging on the door till he opened it, bleary-eyed. Lily? What's going on? It's the middle of the night. Frank, I've got something big to tell you, she said, breathless. She spilled it all, every word she'd overheard in the shed, down to the last dirty detail. To her shock, Frank didn't blow up. He just rubbed his temples and sighed. Lily, I've heard whispers about Dolores before, he admitted. When I'd be out on runs, folks hinted she was stepping out. I kept telling myself it was bunk, couldn't face it. Guess I was kidding myself. Don't you worry though, I'll handle this my way. Frank's jaw tightened. He knew this wasn't something he could ignore anymore. Dolores had crossed a line, and it was time to act. Next day, Walt showed up at Dolores's room right on schedule. The 2 of them tangled up like nothing was wrong. Then bam! The door flew open. Frank stormed in with a couple of hired hands, catching them red-handed. Dolores went pale, stammering. How'd you get back so fast? Frank's voice was steel. Why wouldn't I? Been cozying up the second I'm gone, huh? Next day, Walt showed up at Dolores's room right on schedule. The 2 of them tangled up like nothing was wrong. Then bam! The door flew open. Frank stormed in with a couple of hired hands, catching them red-handed. Dolores went pale, stammering. How'd you get back so fast? Frank's voice was steel. Why wouldn't I? Been cozying up the second I'm gone, huh? Dolores begged for mercy. Walt trembling like a leaf. But Frank didn't flinch. He'd given Dolores plenty of chances over the years, and she'd thrown everyone back in his face. Now plotting to ruin him? No more. The sheriff locked them up quick. And with the evidence Frank brought, they were looking at hard time. They'd earned every second of it. A few days later, Frank was tallying receipts at the counter, when a crowd rolled into the store. He looked up, Eddie Walsh, Jake's right-hand man, leading the pack. Frank grinned, stepping out. Eddie, what brings you here? If the Travis family needs lumber, you don't need to come yourself. Eddie clapped him on the shoulder. Frank, I'm here to congratulate you, buddy. Jake's taken a shine to your niece, Lily. He sent me to talk marriage, and we brought the dowry to prove it. Eddie snapped his fingers, and his crew hauled in boxes of gifts. Fancy stuff, plus a big chest they set right in front of Frank. Eddie popped it open, revealing stacks of cash. $5,000, Frank, a little token from Jake. What do you say? Frank blinked, floored. He hadn't seen this coming. Jake Travis, proposing to Lily with a fortune to back it up. Right then, Jake strolled in, cleaned up and sharp, giving Frank a polite nod. Mr. Peterson, hope I'm not interrupting. Lily around. Frank snapped out of it, hollering for her. When Lily stepped into the store, she froze, spotting Jake and the pile of gifts. Jake? What's all this? She asked, wary. Jake stepped forward, hat in hand, looking earnest. Lily, ever since that night you saved me, I haven't been able to get you out of my head. I've been tied up sorting out family business. But now that's squared away. I knew I had to come find you. I've thought it over, and I'd be honored if you'd be my wife. What do you say?" Lily stood there, dumbfounded. Her, a small-town girl, marrying a guy like Jake Travis? It didn't add up. She opened her mouth to say no, figuring she didn't belong in his world. But then she caught Jake's eyes. Steady, sincere, no trace of a con. Her resolve wavered. Jake pressed on, sensing her doubt. "Lily, I mean it. Folks as kind and brave as you don't come along every day. You saved my life, and I'll spend mine making sure you're happy. Give me a shot, please." Lily didn't know what to say. Her head spinning from the whole thing. I need to think," she mumbled. "Frank's my uncle, let him decide." She ducked out, cheeks burning, leaving Jake and Frank face to face. Jake grinned, tipping his head. "Guess that makes you Uncle Frank now, huh?" Frank laughed, clapping him on the back. "Jake, if you're serious about my Lily, I'll sign off on this wedding myself. Her mom'd want it that way." Frank couldn't help but marvel as Jake headed out. Years back, Lily's granddad, Jim, had pulled him out of a jam. Now Lily'd done the same for Jake. Her family was like a lucky charm for folks in trouble. And if she hadn't stuck around, Dolores might have cleaned him out by now. Funny how things worked out. Goodness coming full circle. "Well, folks, that's the end of Lily's story," Nancy Thompson chimed in. "But stick around, I've got another one up my sleeve. You've been hooked since the first yarn, right? Next up's a doozy. The kind man who helped a beggar, and got a warning about his wife. Trust me, you won't want to miss it." Back in the 1800s, out in Willow Creek, Tennessee, there was a kid named Hank Dawson. He was just 5 when his folks got ambushed by bandits. On a trip out west, both killed on the spot. All they left him was a scrap of farmland, and a few bucks stashed in a tin can. For most, that'd be a slim chance at survival. But Hank's troubles were just getting started. Right after his parents died, Hank's Aunt Clara swooped in, promising to look after him. Instead, she snatched up everything they'd left. The land, the cash, the works. Poor Hank was stuck, watching other kids get coddled, while he cried himself to sleep alone. Day in, day out, he slaved away for Clara, taking grief from his cousin, Billy, who was a year older and twice as mean. One day, Hank was out fetching candy for Billy, a nickel's worth of licorice from the general store. As he shuffled back, he caught a whiff of something savory drifting from the house. Peeking into the yard, he overheard Billy yakking with Clara. "Ma, this chicken stew's the best yet. You outdid yourself." "Eat up, son," Clara said. "I'll save the scraps for Hank. Give him a little something to keep him going." The licorice slipped from Hank's hand, hitting the dirt alongside a few hot tears. He could have stayed quiet, but the candy was ruined now. Clara'd tan his hide for that. Muttering an apology to nobody, he scrounged up his last penny, hiked back to the store, and bought another stick of licorice. When he finally trudged home, Clara lit into him anyway. "What took you so damn long?" she snapped. "Can't even fetch candy without dawdling. What good are you? Give that to Billy and drink this broth. Builds you up. Can't have the neighbors thinking I'm starving you." She shoved a lukewarm bowl his way, and stormed off, leaving Hank to stew in silence. He choked it down, knowing mouthing off would only earn him worse. Hank took it all in stride. Clara might have been a harpy, but she kept a roof over his head, and he clung to that shred of gratitude. Plus, there was one bright spot. The girl next door, Sadie Brooks. Same age as Hank. She'd stick up for him when Billy and his pals got rough, even sneaking him bites of pie or cornbread when Clara wasn't looking. To Hank, Sadie wasn't just a friend. She was his lifeline.
10 years flee by in a blink. Hank shot up into a lean, scrappy kid,
while Sadie blossomed into a spitfire with a spark in her eye. All those days and nights leaning on each other kindled something more than friendship. One spring, during the county fair, Sadie handed Hank a little woven bracelet she'd made.
Tu strandst visste toget her. A hat charm dangling of it.
Keep this safe, all right? She said with a shy grin. Hank stared at it, caught off guard. He hadn't cracked many books. But he knew a token like that meant something big.
2 hertz tites one.
When he didn't answer right away.
Sadie teased. What, you don't want it? I'll give it to somebody else ten. Enno weit. Hank stammeret, snatching it up.
I'll hold on to it, promise. That night, he couldn't sleep. Clutching that bracelet and dreaming of a future with her. Hank knew he didn't have much to offer. A broke orphan with nothing but calluses to his name. So he sat Sadie down and laid it out.
I'm gonna get a job at the sawmill.
Learn a trade, save up some cash.
Once Ivy got the meeting real to show for it.
I'll come knocking at your folks' door, proper-like. Sadie's eyes lit up, and she nodded. Clara caught wind of it and couldn't pack his bag fast enough. One less mouth to feed, maybe even a few bucks coming her way.
Hank hit the sawmill greenes grass.
Starting out hauling logs and sweeping sawdust. But he worked like a mule and picked things up quick. The old foreman, Gus, took a shine to him. Seeing the kid had grit. Before long, Gus put in a word with the boss. And Hank got bumped up to apprentice carpenter. Learning how to turn rough timber into sturdy beams. They say hard work pays off. And for Hank, it sure did. Hank threw himself into it. Earned a solid rep and a knack for woodworking. A few years down the line. With his savings and a little help, Sadie slipped him on the sly. He opened a small carpentry shop in Willow Creek. His craftsmanship, tables, chairs, porch swings, plus his honest dealings, made the place a hit with locals. Business boomed. And Hank knew it was time to make good on his word. Hank cleaned up nice. Marched over to Sadie's folks with a ring in his pocket. And popped the question. I want to spend forever with you, Sadie.
No splitting up, Eva.
Her parents said yes. And they picked a sunny June day for the wedding. Sadie pitched in at the shop after that. And the two of them turned it into a gold mine. A real mom-and-pop success story. Clara noticed Hank's rise and came sniffing around.
Dragging Billy along.
We're kin, ain't we? She said, all smiles.
I reiset you all tose ears. How about a job for your cousin?
Sadie started to shoo them off. But Hank held her back. They've had it rough since Uncle Joe died.
Let's coot some slack.
He put Billy to work at the shop. Even tossed Clara some cash now and then. Clara and Billy figured Hank would hold a grudge. Maybe make their lives hell for old time's sake. But he didn't. He treated them square, no strings attached. That got under their skin more than any payback could. Pretty soon, they quit slacking. Started pulling their weight at the shop. Even looking out for Sadie like she was family.
When Sadie got pregnant.
Clara fussed over her like a mother hen.
One slow afternoon. A ragged old man shuffled into the shop.
Looking like he'd crawled out of a ditch. Hank didn't blink. Waved him in, set out a plate of stew and cornbread. And packed him a sack of biscuits to go. As the guy headed out, he turned to Hank. Sighing shame though.
A good heart like yours.
And you're still in for a bumpy ride.
Mark my words, you'll end up old and alone.
Hank shrugged it off with a laugh. Sadie was 8 months pregnant. Any day now, he'd be a dad.
The shop was steady, life was good.
How could he wind up alone? He didn't argue, just slipped the guy a couple bucks. And sent him on his way. A month later, Sadie gave birth to twins. A boy and a girl, healthy as can be.
Hank was over the moon.
But after the twins came, Sadie's strength took a hit. She got weaker by the day. Even with Clara tending to her like a nurse. Once the first month passed.
It got worse. Wie worse. Hank hired a nanny for the kids.
And brought in extra help for Sadie. But nothing seemed to turn it around. He handed the shop over to Billy. And stayed home, watching his wife fade.
The twins great chubby and loot.
While Sadie wasted away.
It tore Hank apart. He dragged a doctor in Willow Creek to the house.
But they just shook their heads and prescribed tonics. Out of options.
Hank rode out to the little church on the hill.
Dropped a wad of cash in the offering box. And prayed. God, let her pull through. I'll give anything, just save her. That night, Hank crashed hard and dreamed.
The old beggar from the shop floated down from the sky.
Shaking his head.
Told you, son, no kids in your stars.
But you wouldn't listen.
Tolate to back out now. Your wife's got 5 years left. Make em count, spend em with a little onus.
He vanished, and Hank jolted awake. Sweating, the beggar's words echoing in his skull. Hank couldn't shake that dream. The beggar's warning about a lonely end had sounded crazy back then. But now, with Sadie fading, it hit different. He tossed and turned all night,
Dreading what lay ahead.
From then on, seeing his twins' chubby grins didn't lift him like it used to.
It just twisted the kniefe.
And watching Sadie struggle? That was pure hell. Sadie picked up on Hank's gloom quick. One evening, as the twins giggled in their cribs, she grabbed his hand.
Hank, what's hitting you?
Look at our kids, ain't they a blessing? Why re you moping around like the world's ending? Hank's eyes welled up, and he couldn't hold it in. He brushed her hair back, voice cracking. That beggar who came by, he said I'd die alone. I laughed it off, but since the twins, you've been slipping. I prayed at the church, and that night he showed up in my dream. Said you've only got 5 years left. Sadie's face flickered, shock then sorrow, but she didn't crumble. She squeezed his hand, forcing a smile through her own pain.
Hank, look at you, falling apart over this. Everybody's gotta go so mit time.
Birth, death, it's the deal. 5 years?
That's a gift, we know what's coming.
Let's make it the best damn 5 years we can.
Wetching our kids grow. No more tears, Alricht.
Hank pulled her close, choking back sobs. Her grit, even now, floored him. Frowning through the hurt, but talking him up. He couldn't meet her eyes, scared his misery drag her down more. After a beat, he wiped his face and nodded.
You're right.
If time's ticking, we'll make every second worth it. From then on, they threw themselves into life. Playing with the twins, soaking up every laugh. Hank and Sadie took the kids everywhere.
Strolz trug sie Midos. Boot riedes on the creek.
Setting off firecrackers on the 4th of July. They wanted the twins loaded with good times to look back on. Sadie started crafting little keepsakes too.
Wurden toys Hank carved.
Letters she scribbled out for the kids to read someday. Pouring her heart into every line. One day, they left the twins with the nanny. And headed to a neighboring town for a quick errand. On the way back, their truck broke down.
Darkness fell, and a freak snowstorm buried rot.
Stuck, they spotted a rickety shack nearby. And figured they'd crash there till morning. Inside, it was all straw and damp wood. But a faint whimper came from the corner.
Hank shielded Sadie and trekked the sound.
There, buried in the hay, was an old woman.
Shivering and mumbling for water.
Sadie grabbed their canteen and tipped it to her lips, while Hank peeled off his coat and draped it over her. He dug out some jerky and a biscuit from his pack, setting them beside her. Then they bunked down nearby, huddling on a straw pile to wait out the night. They dozed off, bone-tired. Meanwhile, the old woman stirred.
No more frail shekes, just esperypsilones a fox.
She grabbed the food, water, and Hank's coat.
Shot a SLY grin at the sleeping pair.
And slipped out the door like a 20-year-old. Come dawn, a weak sunbeam poked through the roof. Hank and Sadie woke to find her gone. Food, coat, all of it vanished. Poor thing must have needed it more 'en us, Hank muttered. Sadie nodded, unbothered. They'd been away from the twins overnight. And that itch to get home trumped everything else. They patched up the truck quick and hightailed it back to Willow Creek, vowing to treat every day like a bonus from then on. Helping folks when they could.
Keeping the kids close.
5 years zipped by. New Year's Eve rolled around again. After tucking the twins in.
Hank and Sadie sat by the fire. Sipping whiskey to toast another year.
Sadie lifted her glass.
If you don't make it, Hank.
Hang that bracelet I gave you on the mantle.
Find somebody good for you and the kids. Life well, promise me. Hank fingered the worn hard charm.
Nodding through the lump in his throat. Sadie drifted off in his arms that night.
Come morning, she woke up. Ate a hearty breakfast.
And kept on going. A year passed, then another. The twins thrived. And Sadie quit needing those tonics. That 5-year mark? It came and went, leaving them scratching their heads. Half skeptical, half thrilled. To celebrate, they decided to hit the church. And thank whoever was listening. When they got there, Hank spotted that old beggar from years back.
Loitering by the steps.
He charged over, grabbing the guy's arm. The beggar blinked, then grinned, clocking Hank, and Sadie standing right behind him. Well, well, he chuckled.
Innovature after.
Blessings and curses, they're all fate's dice, the beggar said. Remember that night in the shack, 6 years ago? You helped that old gal me, by the way. Your kindness broke that 5-year curse. Kept doing good after that, too. And now your days'll stretch long and happy. He tipped his head and strolled off,
leaving Hank and Sadie gaping.
Turns out, he wasn't just some drifter. He was Reverend Amos, the church's preacher who liked to roam incognito.
Dressed down to test folks' Herz. Hank and Sadie lauketet auf Leter.
Figuring they'd passed his test without even knowing. From then on, they kept their kindness alive. Feeding the poor, fixing folks' porches. Growing old together with a house full of grandkids. Hank's carpentry shop kept humming along. And with Billy and Clara running it like pros. They even opened a second location down the road. Clara didn't try to swipe anything this time. She'd learned her lesson. The whole family pitched in, building a business that put Willow Creek on the map. Hank and Sadie watched it all unfold. Proud as punch, their rough start had turned into something solid.
War's family, anive?
For Hank, it was folks who'd shield you from the storm.
Not kick you when you're down or bleed you der Ypsilon.
Clara'd schemed against him once. But his big heart won her over.
She and Billy came around. Turning from freeloaders into real kin.
A crew that stuck together through thick and thin. Hank and Sadie's love was the real deal.
From scrappy kids swapping secrets.
To gray-haired partners holding hands. Back when they were young. Sadie never minded Hank's broke days. She cheered him on, pushing him to build a future. Even when that 5-year shadow loomed. They didn't quit. They lived harder, laughed louder. Making every minute count for their kids and each other. Kindness? That was Hank and Sadie in spades. They didn't hold grudges. Not with Clara, not with Billy. Treating them decent when plenty would have turned away. One good turn sparked another. And it paid off. Freezing in that shack. They still gave that old woman the shirt off Hank's back.
No hesitation, no expecting a reward.
That's what broke the curse. Proving their goodness wasn't just talk.
Nancy Thompson's voice piped up again.
So what's the takeaway, folks? Life's messy. Complain less, live more.
Keep your chin up. Don't drag bad vibes to the people around you. Be kind, give folks a break.
It's love, friendship, and decency that keep us warm.
Winters pass, Sommers fade.
But ditch the baggage.
And you'll el carve out abrichter tomorrow.
That's all she wrote, y'all, Nancy said with a grin. Hope you liked this pair of tales.
Lily Turner finding her place.
Hank Dawson beating the odds. Drop a comment below if they hit you in the feels. And don't forget to subscribe and share. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time with another story to chew on.